This is the VOA Special English Development Report. Each year since 2001, the American State Department has published a Trafficking in Persons report. It measures efforts by countries to fight human trafficking. This year's report adds the United States for the first time. The Federal Bureau of Investigation says people are being trafficked into major cities nationwide. Tim Whitman at the FBI is an expert on the problem. He says about 20% of the cases involve victims from Mexico, the largest number of any foreign country. Bradley Miles is with the Polaris Project, an organization that fights trafficking. He calls it a very serious problem in the United States. He says some of the victims are forced to work in homes of the wealthy and at restaurants. Activists say some cases of modern slavery involved forced labor in agriculture. But more than 80% of suspected incidents involve the sex trade. That was the finding of a study by the Human Smuggling and Trafficking Center, established by Congress. The Polaris Project operates a telephone hotline that receives calls from around the country, from states such as Texas, California, New York, and Florida. Bradley Miles says one of the top 5 cities where calls come from is Washington. Victims in the nation's capital include women from South Korea, China, and Latin America. Some victims are American citizens. Deborah Sigmund started a group called Innocence at Risk. She says most of the victims of human trafficking come from economically troubled countries. She said they want to think that they can come to America and have a great job, so it's very easy to fool them. Tim Whitman says the smugglers often threaten their victims and make it difficult for them to pay their debts. The threat may be against their family back in their home country. But there are other ways to pressure victims to stay. He said a common threat is, if you leave, I'm going to report you to immigration, and you'll be arrested. You'll be kept in prison for a long time. But there is help. Victims of human trafficking can sometimes get a special visa. It permits them to stay in the United States for up to 4 years. During that time, they can request to stay permanently. But with threats, a language barrier, and fear of the legal system, victims are often unwilling or unable to seek help. And that's the VOA Special English Development Report.
I'm Mario Ritter with the VOA Special English Development Report. The latest Global Hunger Index report says the number of hungry people worldwide has fallen 25% since 1990. Last year, the estimate topped 1 billion people for the first time. But this year's report says the number of people not getting enough to eat has fallen to 925 million. Still, many experts worry that hunger rates are not falling fast enough to meet United Nations goals. One of the first of the Millennium Development Goals is to reduce the hunger rate by 50% between 1990 and 2015. Caroline Herford at the UN World Food Program says the reduction in hunger rates has slowed in recent years. She says there was a small decrease in the number of hungry people in the late 1990s. But then it rose again during the financial crisis of 2007 and 2008. And then high food prices, together with high fuel prices, caused more problems. And climate change has made it more difficult to grow food. The Global Hunger Index is prepared by 3 private organizations based in Germany, the United States, and Ireland. The latest report says 29 countries have levels of hunger that are considered alarming. The biggest increases were found in the Democratic Republic of Congo. The report says hunger has risen by more than 65% since 1990 because of conflict and political insecurity. And Caroline Herford says Congo is not alone. She says conflict is a huge problem that affects the ability to grow crops. People cannot tend their fields if they are always being chased away by armed rebels. A separate report says 22 countries have suffered from a hunger and food crisis for at least 8 years. 20% of the world's hungry people live in these countries, most of which are in Africa. That report is from the UN Food and Agriculture Organization and the World Food Program. They say new policies are needed to deal with these long-term crises. Peter Smerdon at the World Food Program says emergency aid must include development assistance. Both reports were released ahead of World Food Day, October 16th. For VOA Special English, I'm Mario Ritter. Transcripts, MP3s, and podcasts of our reports are at voaspecialenglish.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at VOA Learning English.
This is the VOA Special English Technology Report. Controlling a device with your mind, powering your home with the energy of your own activities. These are 2 of the developments that experts at IBM think will become reality within the next 5 years. The technology company has released its latest 5 in 5 report. The experts think people will soon be able to control many electronic devices simply by using their minds. Scientists at IBM and other companies are researching ways to do this in a field of science known as bioinformatics. They say people will soon have a way to just think about calling or emailing someone in order to make it happen. Bernie Meyerson is IBM's Vice President of Innovation. He says the idea is for something with really deep capability, so that a person, for instance, a quadriplegic, a paraplegic, can actually utilize brain waves to make things happen and basically run their own lives independently. Another prediction is a way for people to power their homes and offices using energy from activities like walking or running. Still another prediction, passwords could soon become a thing of the past. IBM says developments in biometric technology could soon make passwords unnecessary. Some of the most common biometrics used to identify people are fingerprints, face and voice recognition, and iris scans. The iris is the colored part of the eye. Bernie Meyerson says this technology will soon be more widely used by money machines and other devices. Another prediction from the experts at International Business Machines: better technology to prevent unwanted email. The fifth prediction on IBM's 5 in 5 list is an end to the digital divide between those who have technology and those who do not. Bernie Meyerson says, we anticipate within 5 years better than 80% coverage of the world's population by cellular to smartphones. At that point, imagine having, for instance, the ability to speak openly with anybody, anywhere, anytime, and any language. Real-time translation. Literally, the old Star Trek idea of the universal translator coming to be, and how the world would change if there were that kind of communication and openness. And that's the VOA Special English Technology Report. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti.
From VOA Learning English, this is the Technology Report in Special English. Chinese companies Huawei and ZTE have pushed back against accusations that they present a national security threat to the United States. The companies are part of China's telecommunications industry. The House Intelligence Committee released a report on the issue last week. Committee Chairman, Republican Congressman Mike Rogers, spoke about the year-long investigation that led to the report. He said, the investigation concluded that the risks associated with these companies providing equipment and services to U.S. critical infrastructure undermines the core U.S. national security interests. Dutch Ruppersberger, a Democrat, is a ranking member of the House committee. He said, "We already know the Chinese are aggressively hacking into our nation's networks, threatening our critical infrastructure." He also said the Chinese were stealing millions of dollars worth of trade secrets and other sensitive information from American companies. The report warned American companies against doing business with Huawei and ZTE. It also called on the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States to block any purchases, takeovers, or mergers involving the two companies. And it advised officials in the United States to ban the use of equipment from these companies in their systems. Both Huawei and ZTE released statements last week denying the claims in the report. They said it is an attempt to prevent Chinese companies from competing in the American market. Chinese officials also reacted to the report. China's Commerce Ministry called the report's findings untrue. For VOA Learning English, I'm Alex Villarreal.